All right, everything should be working. Hello, everyone, once again.
Welcome back to History of Yesterday podcast. I hope you are all doing fine. So, today we are going to talk about alternate history and we are going to have a look at the Siege of Constantinople, which kind of marks the end era of the medieval era. End era of the medieval era, yeah. I'm starting again with tongue twisters here. I hope everyone's doing fine. Before we start, like always, just a mic
Yeah.
check, see if everything is okay. If something sounds funny, do let us know in the comment section. I am just gonna check. Yeah, we are live on all three different platforms. Yep. Okay, everything is working. So we're gonna go chronologically. We're gonna first look at the fall of Constantinople better said, the siege of Constantinople, and we're gonna kind of discuss the different tactics or different approaches that might have been done by both parties, and how could this have influenced the actual outcome. And let's say maybe if the Byzantine Empire actually defended off Constantinople, what would have happened then? Would have had still been the end of the medieval era or not? After that, we're gonna have also a brief look, depending on the time that we're gonna have left. But I think we'll have enough time on the
Siege of Vienna.
Siege of Vienna. That's gonna be interesting as well.
Both of these are quite focused on the Ottoman Empire, which is kind of central to a lot of European history, as the rise of the Ottoman Empire really impacted Europe, as a lot of the empires had to fight against this threat. And we're going to go through this, going to explore it through alternate history, as I think it's quite interesting to have a look at what would have happened if this big threat wasn't existing, and how that would change the politics of Europe in that kind of era. So, as Andrei said, we'll start off with the fall of Constantinople in 1453. If you'd like to start, Andrei.
Yeah, just before that, I wanted to ask, is the other comment box working?
Facebook.
Facebook and YouTube, yeah, because I have here comments on YouTube and it doesn't seem to show up.
While you introduce it, I'll try to fix it if I can.
Okay. First of all, we have a comment from Oscar on Twitch saying
nice.
Hello, Oscar.
Good to see you again.
Good to have you back. Hope you're gonna find this one interesting as well, and maybe give some input.
As always.
Alternate history. All right, so I'm gonna start off by saying the Ottoman Empire kind of controlled the end of the medieval era because there was such a large power. They had such big influence, and they always been hunting for Europe, taking over Europe. But they always had problems with the small Balkan states, especially Wallachia and Serbia, as well as Hungary. But I think that Wallachia, like we mentioned before in our podcast about Vlad Tepes and Wallachia in general, we saw that they've been pretty much the main barrier of defense when it came to the Ottoman Empire trying to strike and enter Europe. The fall of Constantinople is extremely important because Constantinople at the time was seen as the epicenter of not only history but the center of the world, more like we mentioned before. At these times in the medieval era, as well as the 15th and 16th century, I think it started with the Renaissance and the 17th century, where politics was shifted from religion to a more democratical or, in general, political way of actually controlling the world and controlling other countries. Because at the time, we still had religion, which was influencing the politics within a country and kind of sort of controlling how people were being managed and different cities were being managed. Because of this, it wasn't only the spread of Christianity that was going around, but Christianity was afraid that Islam will enter Europe and it could spread. And due to this, a lot of the big cities were in risk of having revolts, many people changing their religions and trying to kind of throw off Christianity as, hey, you're not the good guys anymore. Look, we found a different vision to look upon. I mention religion because it is important, as, like I said, it has influenced so many people, and it's what kind of started all of these wars around. Many of the crusades that have taken place were mainly pointed at Constantinople, and being at the epicenter, being in the middle of what today is Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, it was seen as not necessarily the capital, but a standoff point, and whoever had Constantinople had main power in Europe. The Constantinople was controlled for quite a few centuries by the Byzantine Empire, and for them it was pretty much, you know, the main core of their country. And seeing as we're going to discuss in this podcast of how important this was, due to not only their defensive abilities but also their geographical position, which allowed them for good trade, and it was very difficult to be taken by any enemies apart from the Ottoman Empire, which has definitely succeeded. I'm not going to bore you with any more politics, but I think we're just going to head on to give you a sort of brief discussion of how the actual siege went. So in 1453, Mehmed II was in control of the Ottoman Empire, and he decided that, you know, we had enough. The Byzantine Empire wasn't paying tribute anymore, so we are going to take Constantinople, which for them was going to become a really big advantage. The problem here was that, as I mentioned before, the Ottoman Empire were massively powered. They had so much stuff. Wait,
I don't. We get to the good stuff. Oscar, we need a bit of background for this because otherwise it doesn't make sense. So, I think we don't want to go into like the really like deep details of it because this is just an alternate history. So basically, to cut out the unnecessary details, the Ottoman Empire was much stronger than the Byzantines. There was no one in the Christian world willing to help the Byzantines because they were Orthodox rather than Christian, which meant that when they pleaded with the Pope, they didn't.
Yes, no, they did call out for help, and during the middle of the siege, I think Venice came to help.
Yeah, but that wasn't near enough to beat back the Ottoman armies.
Yeah, it was just, you know, like they sent a few ships and like.
So this meant because the Ottomans were quite advanced as well. They were famously known for their cannons. If I think it's the urban cannon. I don't remember what it's called because we were speaking about this before.
No, it's the wait, I need to check the name. I don't want to mispronounce this.
Oh, then somebody on Facebook has commented something that you were talking about before. The Ottoman King Mehmed was moving ships via the route via land.
We are going to get to that. Yes, there's some very interesting facts about this. The Dardanelles gun.
Yeah.
So this is, again, we are going to get to all of this because this gun is especially important to this siege. Just give me a second.
Do you want me to bring up a picture of it? That would be probably quite good.
I think you could bring a picture of it so we can talk about it and see it until we get to it. So as I was mentioning, Mehmed II had enough. He wanted to take Constantinople, which at the time the Byzantine Empire was controlled by Constantine X, or was it the 10th or the 11th?
I think it was the 10th.
I think it was the 10th. Constantine X.
Oh, wait.
Controlled.
There
right.
So, sorry, the cameras. There we are. We're back.
In this battle, we were going to look at the Ottoman Empire, which was going to come with around probably more or less 100,000 troops. That considers all cavalry, archers, janissaries, whatever. We are looking at around 70 cannons, and in total 126 ships, which pretty much engulfed the north and the south parts of Constantinople. However, what the Byzantine Empire done, which was really clever, is they built this sort of chain on the north side of Constantinople, so no ships can come and actually flank the north side. This meant that they were safe from that side. But as a commenter on Facebook said, that the Ottoman King Mehmed II moved his ships via land route in this battle. Yes. But I want to go by this chronological, but I'm going to mention it now.
Do you want me to bring up the picture of the guns now? Because we were just talking about them to give a bit of visual representation.
Yes, if you
so
can.
I'm gonna if everyone looks at the stream, there is a picture of the guns from the.
This is the actual gun which is represented in the museum. But do bring also a because I know there's like some paintings which show the gun.
Paintings, sure. I'll see if I can find one.
Because this is just like part of what the gun was. It's not the actual.
Oh yeah, there we are. I found this is quite good. I'll bring this up now.
Excuse me.
Are you good there? Then make sure you don't get corona, man. We can't do a podcast with you in hospital.
I'll actually do that. I'm like, I
there
have
we
a
are.
podcast to run. I cannot be here.
That's
There we go.
a
That's
visual,
better
like,
visual
yeah,
representation.
they were
So
massive.
it took around 3 hours to reload this. And just give me a second, because I want to try and go a bit in order. That's why I don't want to discuss and jump from one thing to
Alright,
another.
I'll switch back to
I
us
was
then.
talking about the ships. I was talking about
Yeah,
the
yeah,
ships. Yes, that is true. They were taken by land. So what he has done, because he was trying to push from the west side, which was the main side, which had biggest defensive walls and where most of the troops, most of the archers, as well as the Byzantine cannons were placed. So to give you an idea, the Byzantine Empire, the only thing that they had left was 7,000 troops, which included archers and infantry, around 15 cannons, but those cannons were pretty weak. They were not good at building cannons, not as good as the Ottoman Empire, and only 26 ships, for which all of them were defending the north side of Constantinople. And also, yes, it is true to mention that because most of the people couldn't escape, they used most of the citizens, which I will assume to as peasants. We had 30,000 peasants that were remained to fight in the last
Last stand.
battle. Yeah, last stand in the center, or actually the north side of the city, because they were trying to actually run away with the ships, but they were caught on the north side, waited by the Turkish Navy, the Ottoman Navy. Sorry, referring to as Turkish. So what they done is that because they couldn't get across, as I said, this chain that they had built, it was pretty much massive defenses of all the ships that they had, some ships that were brought from Venice, as well as most of the cannons put over there. So it was pretty much impenetrable. Even though the Ottomans did have enough power to actually go through, they would lose too many ships, too many troops, so it wasn't worth it. So what they did was this crazy thing where they took the ships on land. It took about 1 month to take the ships. It was about 26 ships or something like that. They didn't take a lot of them because they didn't need a lot of them to actually flank this. And it took about 1 month to traverse 156 kilometers, I think it was. I'm not exactly sure, but around that. With ships that weighted around hundreds of tons. I don't know how much, but yeah.
Obviously they were wooden ships, so they're not as heavy as modern ships, but they're still quite a big task for people 600 something years ago.
And we're talking about the only technology they had is pretty much horses, camels, whatever they used,
Yeah.
and yeah. So you can imagine the massive power that the Ottoman Empire had just by doing so, moving ships on actual land. And this is what kind of made the whole Byzantine Empire demolished, because as the flank was so good, they couldn't control the west side anymore, because they had to take troops from the west side and move them onto the north, which meant that they were going to lose the actual defensive ability from the west. We have some.
Yeah, I think we should address all the comments. So on Facebook, we have somebody, because that was one of the first comments, so I just want to address that. So please do a podcast on King Tutankhamun, Egyptian pharaoh, next time. That would be actually interesting, because I don't think me and Andrei know that much about him. We'd have to do a bit of research.
Like I said, our ancient history is a bit.
Yeah, it's a bit sloppy.
I'm pretty rusty. I know a lot about the Vikings, and that's pretty much it.
And then on Twitch we have Constantinople was the center of the Eastern Roman Empire. Rome kept the reign by Holy Roman Church. They thought they could rebirth the Holy Roman Empire again, but the fall of Constantinople ended the stream.
And I think it's also, I forgot to mention that the fall of Constantinople brought to end this is why we kind of say that it is the end of the medieval empire, the medieval era, not just because of the fall of Constantinople, but because the last emperor of the Roman Empire had died. I think it was Romulus Augustus, because he was also in Constantinople at the time, and he tried to defend it, and he died trying to defend it.
And that's where the legacy of the Roman Empire kind of ended. And then we have Oscar saying, imagine dragging an Ali Berkey class across 160 kilometers using horses. I mean, it wouldn't be the best idea, to be honest, but it's like back then it apparently worked because the Ottomans did successfully end up taking Constantinople, and I think we should bring it on to the alternate history part of the podcast because we have been banging on about the background. Okay, come on, finish it off.
I just want to talk about. This is okay. If you want to bring the alternate side, we can bring the alternate side, and I think the best thing to do right now is to start about discussing the Dardanelles gun. I'll just call it the big cannon, so we don't get the name confused because it's a bit of a tongue twister. Many historians argue that if it wasn't for this giant cannon that they have especially built for this siege, they wouldn't have taken Constantinople. Because this cannon actually allowed to penetrate the thick walls, the thick defensive walls, and make openings so that the whole infantry of the Ottoman Empire would come through. You see, the problem was that, yes, the Ottomans did have almost 100,000 troops, but trying to put all of them at once through one small point, it was just a death sentence. They would just get killed over and over and over again. They tried that 3 times, and on the 4th time, they actually managed to concentrate all their cannon firepower onto one single spot and make holes within the defensive wall so that they can spread the whole infantry and rush in to actually take and kill most of the civilians which were fighting towards the end, towards the last stand. And I think I want to argue that, you know, people say that if it wasn't for this cannon, they wouldn't have taken it. I think they would have still taken Constantinople, because the Ottomans had so much power, and let's remember the Byzantine Empire was pretty much cornered from every side. They didn't have any ability to take any more resources. They didn't have ability to get any reinforcements. They cried for help towards all other European sort of allies, and no one responded. Well, it was just Venice with a few ships, but that was meaningless.
Do you want to address the comments on Twitch? Because we have a few.
Oh, yeah. So we have a comment from Silent Control who says it could be Ottoman or any other state.
I'm guessing that's referring to the comment above.
Oh, right.
And then Oscar says America outflanks Constantinople by moving the country around the west side instead. And then killing 30k civilians is considered a war crime these days. I mean, it was probably considered a war crime back then, but who is going to persecute the Ottoman Empire?
I mean, the thing about it, there's a difference between when you're killing a civilian that is unarmed and when you're killing a civilian that is armed.
They're not classed as civilians anymore when they're defending the castle. They're classed as defenders then, so killing them is just the rules of war.
But we can't really call them troops because they didn't really have any sort of training or military experience, to say the least.
To go and then somebody on Facebook mentions the Hagia Sophia. Yeah, that was that was like one of the biggest Orthodox churches like in the world until it was converted to a mosque after Constantinople was taken over, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's obviously, to this day, it remains a mosque, as the Ottoman Empire, now Turkey, has been controlling Constantinople / Istanbul for the past 600 something years.
Around that, yeah.
Yeah, 650, 670, something like that. But I'm pretty. We should do a podcast when we go to Hagia Sophia. That would be an interesting business trip.
I mean, I'm planning to do these sort of things. We're planning to do once our schedules is a bit more freed and hopefully the whole pandemic comes to an end. We're planning to visit some historical sites and do some live podcasts from there, and describe the scene, as if you will.
Show the world that kind of side of history that we don't really talk about.
But you see, I've been disappointed so many times where I went to historical places, very important historical places, such as, like, for example, Auschwitz, and I had a tour guide that was just, I'm like, you're meaningless. I mean, I didn't want to, be rude or anything, but I learned absolutely nothing from that guide, and I was like, you're jumping over facts. There's so many facts here. These people don't know about them. I wanted to jump in and tell them, but wait, there's more.
I think we're as always going a bit off topic here. I think we should turn back to alternate history in Constantinople.
I was telling Calin before we started the stream. I was like, we're gonna somehow end up talking about communism, even though communism doesn't yet exist.
Yeah, it always happens like this. But what can you do? It's part of the podcast. That it's us just rambling.
So I think, to get back to where we left off, the main question here is, let's think on a hypothetical sense. If somehow, by a miracle, the Byzantine Empire actually was able to defend off the Ottoman Empire, and also not taking into consideration that the Ottoman Empire would come back and keep on crushing, even though I wouldn't think that would be the case, though, because they would probably also get a lot of pressure from the Balkans. So they had to kind of concentrate, you see, the armies and troops.
Yeah, but
And trying to focus. I mean, yes, we can't neglect the importance of Constantinople once again, but at the same time, you can't really, lose that many troops, even though how powerful they are, how resourceful, and whatever they were. You can't really just lose people like that, and obviously they weren't that stupid.
no, but yeah, go read the comments and I'll jump in after.
Silent Control says, sometimes I think Hagia Sophia was a part of the treasure. I wish all Constantinople kept like used to be. Constantinople was the sister city of Rome. Yes, and most definitely that was.
And then
we have another comment from Oscar saying the fall of Constantinople starts should talk in the guides
listen,
history of podcast.
Yeah, at History of Yesterday podcast, you should be expecting this by now. We start at one point, always end up talking about like 20th century history. But to jump on what I was saying before, I think if Europe organized themselves properly and didn't allow for this rise of the Ottomans, they could have helped the Byzantines by jumping into this war, kind of create a coalition, like all of the Christian states around. They could have created a coalition and kind of placated and fought to fight back the Ottoman Empire and maybe give some of the old land that the Byzantines had back to the Byzantines. That was like part of the Ottoman Empire, because a lot of the western coast of the Ottoman Empire across the Bosphorus, which is the gap between Turkey and the Balkans, a lot of the western part used to be owned. Actually, most of the peninsula used to be owned by Byzantines, so they had claims to this land from it wasn't even that old, because the Byzantines been slowly picked apart by the Ottomans and the states around it for quite a long time. So they still had quite good claims for most of the land around them. So in this alternate scenario, if the Europeans actually came to the call for help that the Byzantines created and actually fought with them, they could have maybe pushed back the Ottomans to a point where they could give some of the Ottoman land back to the Byzantines and slowly start doing this coalition wars against it if they saw the Ottomans as a rising threat. But obviously they didn't. They only saw the Ottomans as a rising threat when they started pushing through the Balkans, taking over Wallachia, Moldova, when they started to fight Hungary, when they started to gain land over on the eastern side also, when they were starting to beat back the Mamluks or the Al-Khalilu Empire. I don't remember the names exactly, but a lot of the they took over Trebizond and all the other eastern states as well, and obviously this became a rising threat. But at the point of the siege of Constantinople, it wasn't such a big threat for all of these Christian countries to waste their resources into fighting a war that wasn't really their war, because it's not their land. A lot of states back then were much more selfish than the states that we see now. Like in World War II, all of these alliances meant that states who weren't really meant to be involved in the war joined in anyway. That wasn't really the case back in ancient history. It was you had allies, but they would have to be very close allies, and because of the distance between Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire compared to Hungary, the Italian states, even states in the Holy Roman Empire, it was such a big distance that it seemed like a far-off threat, and putting resources into it just seemed useless, because except for getting maybe a bit of praise from the Pope, you really gained nothing else from helping the Byzantines, because you weren't in terms of one of these alliances. Back in this era, it kind of worked with the I do a favor for you, you'll have to do a favor for me, and the Byzantines couldn't really do anyone any favors because they weren't in a position to help anyone else when they needed so much help.
But at the same time, I need to interfere. But at the same time, if we were to talk about this argument, we kind of can blame the actual so-called allies, such as Venice, which was a neighbor of the Byzantine Empire for so long, to the degradation of the Byzantine Empire, which kind of we could say was the reason why Constantinople fell in the first place. It was because Venice was so growing so fast. They were taking all the trade from the Byzantine Empire because they were pretty much covering that side. I don't know exactly what it was called, but that side of
What are we talking about? Like the coast, which is like Croatia and
that coast, exactly that coast. So they were taking absolutely all the trade, and also because they had such a good navy, they were protecting all of their merchants, and they were able to even go as far as Egypt to get rare resources, bring them back, and sell them to Central Europe. This is why Venice is such a rich country nowadays as well.
I think we should refer to the comment on Twitch because with that that's been sent for a
Sorry,
while.
yeah.
It was referring to what I was saying before. So if the European countries helped Constantinople, the city would have kept the place. I wish they would have gathered all the forces. But yeah, like I said, the thing is in the political climate of the ancient world, there was no payoff to be so selfless, especially in these conditions where the country that you're trying to help is so far away and it can't really come to your aid in case of a conflict because of the distance. And because of that, it's very unlikely that a scenario where a coalition would be created to beat back the Ottomans actually happens, because there is no payoff for the Central / Eastern European countries to help Constantinople except for trying to placate the Ottoman Empire. And as I've said before, none of the European countries saw this rise of the Ottoman Empire. They just thought it was just another like medium-sized state that was just gonna keep to their own and just control their region. But they obviously turned out to be wrong, as the Ottoman Empire rose up and conquered a lot of Arabia, bit of northern Africa, a lot of the Balkans, and so on.
I think an important reason why the Allies didn't help them anymore was because, well, put it from this perspective, we had at this point how many, 3 or 4 crusades?
Yeah.
I think it was 4 crusades, right? From which only 2 were successful, if I remember correct.
My knowledge about the Crusades is quite bad, so I'll take your word for it.
Successful. It might have been 3. Not exactly sure. But the thing is, so we had so many crusades, yeah? But we see the Ottoman Empire rebuilding so quick. And that's why, because I was thinking, why not have another crusade? But the morale about crusades was kind of going down.
Yeah.
Because they saw that whatever they would do, how hard they would push the Ottoman Empire back, they just rebuild so quick.
I mean, the Pope tried calling for a crusade after Constantinople fell, if I remember correctly. It might have been, I think it's like 1470s. The Pope tried to call for a crusade, and Hungary and some other countries came, gathered troops, but it was obviously not enough, as the Ottoman Empire just pushed them back. Because at the time, the quality of the Ottoman troops was much higher than the quality of the troops in Europe. They had the elite Janissaries, who are like the elite soldiers of the empire, and the rest of their troops were really well trained also, and they had very good cavalry, which meant that it was a big threat to all of these Central and Eastern European countries, who, although they had good armies, they didn't have the tactics and technology that the Ottoman empires had. Because at the beginning of the 15th century, the Ottoman Empire was a little bit more technologically advanced than most of the European states, which meant that they had a little bit of an edge over everyone.
It wasn't just the numbers. Again, it was the numbers and having the technological advancement, and also the naval superiority.
Yeah.
Which
the only European country that could rival the Ottoman navy would have probably been Venice. And Venice did join in some. I don't remember the war exactly, but I know there was a big battle between the Venetian and Ottoman navy. If anyone knows it in chat, please type the name of it. But there was a really big battle between them. I'll see if I can find it. But I
know which one you're talking about. I don't remember the name exactly of the battle. I know which one you're talking about.
Venetian Ottoman navy.
They were outnumbered and they still destroyed them.
Let me see if I can find it. Oh, it's the Battle of Lepanto. There we are. It's 1571. Yeah, I remember because I think I've written about this. So they were quite evenly matched. It was the 222 Ottoman galleys and 206 Venetian galleys.
And so they were outnumbered.
They were slightly outnumbered by the Ottomans, but the Venetians killed 40,000 Ottomans, and the Ottomans only killed 10,000 Venetians. So
good ships.
the Venetians have a really good naval traditions because obviously their city is you are required to have a good navy to keep this island running. So not only are they good at trade, but they're also good at combat, which showed in this battle where, although they were slightly outnumbered and the Ottomans had quite good ships, they still managed to beat them back because they had the superior quality and the superior tactics in terms of fighting on the sea.
So let's look at other things from an alternate perspective, other maybe ideas of not having Constantinople before, and what effect would this have had not only on the Byzantine Empire but on the whole world.
I mean, the thing is, Constantinople / Istanbul, after it was named, was quite central to the Ottomans rising to power because it was a big center of trade, as we have already talked about. You had a lot of goods that came in from Central Asia to Crimea, which then made its way either through the Eastern European trade routes, but it was easier to go by sea through the Bosphorus through Constantinople. And obviously this gave the Ottomans a lot of leverage in terms of controlling trade from the east. Not as much as Egypt, let's say, because Egypt, obviously, they had the trade routes through the Arabic Straits. I think they're called the Arabic Straits. The bit of sea between Africa and Arabia.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so they were basically the one-stop shop for anything outside of Europe, and something that the Venetians actually took advantage of, as Andrei mentioned before. But in terms of Constantinople gave the Ottomans a big advantage because, one, it was a very rich city. It was the jewel of the Eastern Roman Empire when that broke off. And it continued to be built up as the Eastern Roman Empire continued to kind of chip away and fall. So there was a lot of resources being fed into it, which meant that, like I said, it was a rich city. And in terms, there was really big cultural importance as well. And that was something that gave the Ottoman Empire a lot of legitimacy and a lot of prestige in the international community, especially in terms of being respected by the European countries who, at that time, before taking over Constantinople, they just saw them as a small Arabic state, Islamic state. There we are. So that's what I was looking for. Rising to power and taking over a bit of land, but they just expected it like previous states, like the Mughal Empire. They just expected them to Mughal Empire is after. Sorry, that was wrong. But they just expected it. Let's say like the Horde. They just expected them to break apart and fall because obviously the Mongol horde, when Genghis Khan died, it all split apart and then ended up in pieces. And this was slightly before. So they didn't really have high expectations for this. But once they saw that they took over this bastion of Christianity in the east, this city that was known to be impenetrable by all the people that have been trying to take it over, because the Ottomans weren't the first people to try to take over Constantinople. There were others before them that have tried, and as is seen by Constantinople still being there in 1453, they failed. And the Ottomans were the first to be able to take over the city so easily. And this, not easily, but like compared to other tries, it was it's much easier. We have a comment on Twitch from Silent Control. Ottoman can be identified as Muslim version of the Roman Empire. They use the same army system after the Constantinople. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
No, that is true. And based on this, what I wanted to say is, do you think from an alternate perspective, if, let's say, like I said, the Byzantine Empire managed to defend off the Constantinople siege, defend off the Ottoman Empire, would they been able to kind of reborn and rebuild as the new Roman Empire? Because in a way, that's what Romulus was trying to do with the Byzantine Empire. I think seeing that from this perspective, the perspective of, having that pride, having that reputation as the Roman Empire, but then again, they didn't have the numbers which they used to have 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. I think in terms of, I'll go to the comment on Twitch first before I start going off on a rant. They just marked every ideal with Muslim ideas. Yeah, so it was kind of European thought combined with Muslim ideals, and that was a very good combination. And I'm going to come to that as I talk about this. So I think without Constantinople, we wouldn't have seen such a big influence of the Ottoman Empire in the Balkans specifically, because having control over Constantinople meant that the transfer between Anatolia and the Balkans was made really easy. Without having Constantinople, transferring between these two regions would have been much harder, which it would have meant starting a campaign in the Balkans would have been much more costly and, to a point, not really worth it. So I think rather than we might have seen a slight rise of the Byzantine Empire in the Balkans as their influence grew if they did manage to defend Constantinople in 1453 and get a bit of help from the from the west.
Just to pick up on that, but then again, you see all of the states, especially the ones in Balkans, they were so secluded because just like Wallachia, just like Moldova, just like Serbia, they all asked for help and no one helped them. So why should they help the Byzantine Empire?
Yeah, no, but we're talking in like the best case scenario for them. And what I was going to mention is I would have predicted that the Ottomans would have ended up focusing a lot more on other Arabic states. So they would have had a bigger influence in the Arabian Peninsula. Maybe a lot more of North Africa would have been taken over, as there was just generally the Mamluk Empire would have been a much more would been destroyed much quicker as the Ottomans looked for somewhere else to expand, as their kind of expansion route is blocked by this lack of having the city of Constantinople.
We have another comment on Twitch saying, "Yeah, it's the combination."
That's referring to the previous comment, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably. I don't know.
We're gonna wait to see if we have any more inputs on any ideas on any other hypothetical events from this side of alternate history. If not, we're gonna move on to Vienna.
So this ties it very well together, because the fall of Constantinople it marks the start of the Ottoman rise to power, and the next event that we're going to talk about, which is the Siege of Vienna, is the start of the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Because after the Siege of Vienna, the Ottoman Empire started to weaken, because that is where the Siege of Vienna marked their stop of expansion into Europe.
Well, I want to say a thing about that, but we're going to wait a few more minutes to see if we get any other comments on the fall of Constantinople. If not, we are going to move on. So we'll give Calin here a minute to refresh it.
And I've been speaking too much. My throat's been going a bit dry. As always, I always like to go on these kind of rants.
He starts and he can't stop.
I don't see anything, so I'm going to change the topic
until you do that, I wanted to say that, like we mentioned with the fall of Constantinople and the tactic of the Ottoman Empire and how they kind of strategically spread their power between the East and the West. It's also the main point in the Siege of Vienna, yes.
Battle of Vienna, Siege of Vienna, we can use them interchangeably.
Yeah. This is what they did, and this is why they kind of started to collapse after, is because they concentrated so much power and so many troops in one siege that they kind of went a bit too far, wasting too many resources. Not really wasting, but like I said, if you're not going to efficiently take over a city, then it's kind of a loss, rather than, yes, you won Constantinople, yes, you won the Siege of Vienna, but at what cost?
I'll just give a quick rundown of the Battle of Vienna. So, the Battle of Vienna is a battle between, obviously, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and... we have two sides. We have the Ottoman Empire and all of their vassals, which includes Moldavia, Wallachia, the Duchy of Transylvania, and the rest of the Ottoman vassal states. And on the other side, we have the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, some Holy Roman states, and obviously both Hungary and Austria, as they were quite close allies. This is quite central to late 17th century history, because this is a turning point in the rise of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire wanted to push further into Europe, and to do this, they had to take over Vienna, as that was the biggest stopping block, which stopped them to move up more north, away from the Balkans into Central Europe. And Vienna was known as a city that was quite similar to Constantinople. It was known to be quite like a very well protected, impenetrable city, and not to be not to be outdone. The I'm going to get his name really badly wrong, but the Mustafa Pasha, I think, was he wanted to take over the city. His previous namesakes were great warriors, and he wanted to continue the legacy. And this would be the best way to do it: take over the city of one of your biggest rivals, who claims that this city is basically impenetrable. So they used they started to siege the city. They used all of these techniques, like digging under the walls, blowing up the walls with gunpowder, and then trying to run through the gaps. But it wasn't working. But the defenders from the city starting to whittle down slowly and slowly. So if the Ottomans were able to hold out for a bit longer, they would have been able to take over the city. But luckily for the Austro-Hungarians, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth came in to help with their famous hussars, and they managed to beat back the Ottomans. And I think the people in Vienna had about a week or less of food and supplies. So the support from the Polish came in just the right time for the people in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And as part of this defensive, the Ottoman leader, the Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, actually died, and this created a lot of instability within the empire, and that's why a lot of people call this the kind of the start of the fall of the Ottoman Empire, as after this, both the leadership and the integrity of the empire started to become very shaky, and as a result, the empire didn't really have the same oomph and the same power to be able to take over countries as they'd been doing before, because from 1453 to up until 1683, the Ottoman Empire just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and gaining more land as they went. And obviously, it's hard to manage all of this land, and you need a strong leader. And after the fall of Mustafa Pasha, the Ottomans were quite unlucky to have a long series of quite weak leaders, meaning that the empire started to crumble. And now the question is that I wanted to bring up, because this was my idea for the topic, is what would have happened if the Ottomans actually managed to take over Vienna and Mustafa didn't die? Because this is a quiet... Vienna was not only the capital of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but it was also because Austria has been reigning over the Holy Roman Empire for so long. What would have been the implications of the Holy Roman Emperor's capital being taken over by someone seen as an outsider and of a different religion also?
From a political perspective, I would say that you can imagine that the French and the English at the time would have jumped in automatically with all of their brute force to take over Vienna back. At least that's how I would see it, because like you said, it's a representation of Christianity. It's an important place of Christianity, and from a political perspective, because religion was politics at the time, they couldn't allow such a thing, because they would see that this is the biggest step taken by the Ottoman Empire or by a Islamic state towards the fall of Europe.
What I was going to mention is that although the Christian world has combined a lot of times throughout history to try to combat threats such as the Ottoman Empire, and this would have been a very good time to do so. And what really surprises me is the fact that no one else except for the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth came to the help of the Austro-Hungarians, because this was such a like the Ottoman empires have been expanding so quickly, and everyone in Europe was seeing this and was seeing this as a threat. But obviously places like France, Spain, and more Western states of the Holy Roman Empire saw this as a more distant threat, not something that is like going to threaten them anytime soon. So
this comes again from what I said about the Crusades, where they saw that they're pretty much inefficient, and they were thinking to themselves, well, until they don't come to our doorstep, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
really stupid.
Yeah,
This is where also the kind of shift in political terms from having religion as politics and trying to push towards more of a more of, as I call it, kingsmanship or democratic kind of way to actually control the country and control the people within the country has started to happen, because they saw that, Christianity, although it was still highly regarded and respected, it didn't have the military influence it once had.
I was going to mention, because you actually bring up a good point. This is actually around the time where there was a big switch in how people see states. Because I've been learning about statesmanship and stuff like that recently. And a key point to the change in how people saw states was the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. Just wanted to get the date right. I don't want to. If my international relations professor is watching this, I'm very sorry. But yeah, so the Treaty of Westphalia kind of defined the term of sovereignty, which before this wasn't. States were, the borders and sovereignty weren't really defined as we know them today. Like the UK border with Scotland ends at some point. The UK border with Ireland ends at some point. These are much more modern concepts than you might think. Obviously, borders existed back then, but they weren't things like the definitions of like states and such wasn't really as like pinpoint. So this is a quite recent, in terms of the Battle of Vienna. If we're talking that about being now. It's a quite recent development in how people saw states back then, and that might have attributed. That's why we might attribute some doubt towards the fact that all of these states now that they have self-determining sovereignty are looking more. They're being more selfish, as they see that their sovereignty isn't being threatened. It's only the sovereignty of another country, and a lot of the Holy Roman states, such as off the top of my head, the Palatinate, Brandenburg, all of these were electors who wanted to become the leaders of the Holy Roman Empire. And to them, the Holy Roman Emperor being weak only meant that they could rise to power. So in a world where states started to become a bit more selfish, the lack of help towards the people in Vienna is kind of obvious, in my opinion.
I don't think selfish is a good term to use here, and I'm saying this because think of how the amount of troops French and English have sent towards Crusades, and what did they gain back?
The Crusades are a different thing, because the Crusades, people.
No, yes, I do understand, but I'm saying it from a political perspective again, because these Crusades were being called by the Pope, right?
No, but the thing is, the Crusades weren't it. It's not a country sending in troops. It's a voluntary thing. So if a king or a queen wanted to bring some people, they could do it. Or like if a bishop, or like if ruler of a county in Britain, so let's say like the ruler of like Cornwall, wanted to go to a crusade, gain the title of being a liberator of Jerusalem or whatever, he could gather troops and go. But that was voluntary. It wasn't the whole country saying, okay, we're all going to go to war against the state in the Middle East.
It wasn't the whole country, right? But there was still quite a lot of troops and a lot of elite troops. And my point is that they were always being called by the Pope, oh, let's do a crusade. But how much did they put in, and how much did the other countries put in? And didn't get back, because I said the value within the Crusades was to actually push back the Islamic states.
I mean, a lot of
obviously show the power that Christianity has.
Yeah, it was
power again, like we say with modern wars and the influence you have to actually show who has the bigger guns, pretty much. But the point I'm making is they didn't really get the value from it, because, as we said before, as we brought up the point before, pushing the Ottoman Empire always worked, but they were rebuilding so quick that it was like meaningless to have these crusades. Again, meaningless in the point that we're not really pushing them back as much as we can, as much as we wanted.
Oscar
I
saying
see
the
your face, I
cost
presume
benefit
that's
analysis. Yeah, the cost benefit analysis is not adding up for Andre. I mean, the fact is the Crusades weren't really like
That's the problem.
in terms of like if we use the wording cost benefit analysis, it really like it wasn't something that benefited people in terms of physical value, because a lot of people went on these crusades to just basically get a one-way ticket to heaven. Because if you died on a crusade, or if you were successful in a crusade, the Pope was like, you can just go to heaven, no matter what you've done, like, in your life.
It's just not just about physical things, but the idea of, well, we are Christians as well, but why do we have to be controlled as Christians by just one state? We can have Christianity in our own state.
Oh, and
maybe even change it a bit.
yeah, so that's what happened with Henry VIII, Anglicanism, and obviously that was a big split away from the Roman Church, and that weakened the Roman Church a lot, because other states, especially with the rise of Protestantism in the Holy Roman Empire, other states looked at it and they saw that the the Roman Church didn't hold as much power as it used to. But our Christianity is better than their Christianity. Let's convince them with our sharp sticks.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, all of the religious wars in the Holy Roman Empire was basically that. I think it was early 16th century. Was it late 5th? No, late.
No, early, it was 16th century already.
So yeah, so it was like middle to late 16th century, then early 17th century that all of these wars happened, and actually the Ottomans. I don't remember if I'm gonna check this just to be sure, but I think the Ottomans fought on the side of the Protestants in the religious wars.
I think they did, yeah. Sounds familiar to me too, but not sure about it. So do you have a check?
The Protestant Reformation wars. I just want to make sure. Oh my god, there is so many. There is I wish I could.
So many, but let's assume yes.
Yeah, the thing is, there's ones in Central Europe, there's ones in like, oh my god, okay. There's a list of 30 wars here.
Have a like counter, please.
Sorry? Yeah, so I'm just gonna assume that my knowledge is right, and that the Ottomans did fight in one of these religious wars, and it shows that this split in Europe didn't really matter. It was just more about power, because they were picking the people who saw the Ottomans as a threat were now being allying up with them to fight against the other people. So it was kind of a friend, no, an enemy of an enemy is a friend, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that obviously
create the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Oh, well, we have a donation from Oscar Massive Schlong, $5.49. Thank you very much. But yeah, what was I saying? That's through my train of thought. That always happens.
I said I think you mean the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah. Is that not what I said?
No, you said something a bit different.
Okay, so
it was along those lines, but it was a bit different. I think that's how the saying goes. Please, anyone, do tell me if I'm wrong.
Oh wait, you donated in pounds, £4.20. Yeah, no, our stream thing is set up on dollars for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, thank you. Once again, it doesn't recognize Polish or Great British pounds. Well, I'll see if I can get it to recognize currency.
Thanks to Twitch about this. No, it's it's in our parts. I think it's our the service that we're using, Custer.
No, it's Stream Elements that we're using for donations.
Okay.
So yeah,
I let Calin do with all the
I'm the technical support here.
Headphones on.
Going back to what I was saying, to bring it back a little bit, because we went from Siege of Vienna in 1683 to the fucking Protestant Reformation, so it's a bit of a jump, as always. This is a podcast where we literally just jump from topic, but in terms of what would have happened, I think that if the Ottomans did manage to take over Vienna, it would have been Europe. Europe would have been in a much more dire state than we saw in our like timeline, as you can say.
Do you
Um,
think that the French and the English would have woken up?
I don't think so. I think the Holy Roman Empire would have come together a lot more. Like, it would have been closer, and they would have tried to fight off this threat. And a coalition would have been formed in Central/Eastern Europe. I don't think France or England would have joined.
I think the French and the English had so much pride in their power, and especially the French. You know, we can't assume they don't, because they had so much power. They gained so much power from all the medieval conquests. But again, still, they couldn't really compare to the Ottoman Empire. At least the Ottoman Empire within 15th century.
What I was going to mention is I don't remember the timeline of the Habsburg dynasty, but I think at this point in time, Spain was still under the control of the Habsburgs.
I
So,
think so, yeah.
Spain should.
I think it was 16th century. I think.
I'll have a look. Habsburgs in Spain, because that would have. Let me see. I mean. I mean.
What do you mean?
I don't know what I mean, because this is the Habsburg line is so long, and there is so many there's so many people.
The date.
I think it's 1516 to 1700, so it would have been around this time.
Yeah.
So obviously the Habsburgs were the dynasty that ruled over Austria, and their dynasty is really well known for being spread across Europe. So you had Habsburgs on the Hungarian throne, you had Habsburgs on the Spanish throne, you had Habsburgs on the on like a lot of other small states in the Holy Roman Empire, and it was just a mess in terms of a family tree, because there was a lot of inbreeding to keep power within the family, and in general is an example of what you shouldn't do when your dynasty gets into power. But what I was going to go back to is the fact that if Vienna was taken over, the Habsburgs from Spain, the Spanish Habsburg Empire, would have most likely come in, and that's one big state that I can see coming in. I don't know about England, I don't know about Spain, no, I mean France, because they don't have as much of a connection with that part of the world, and the Ottomans would have had to fight through a lot of states to end up in France and England, and I don't think they wouldn't end up in England anyway, because the channel.
Just like you said, because the more land they were covering, the more land they were gaining, it was harder for them to manage. They needed more resources. They needed more people, more men, more manpower to actually manage that much land.
I think
again, most of the states within Europe were enemies of the Ottoman Empire. So,
I think even if they managed to take it over, I think a revolt, because of the drastic difference between Arabic customs and European customs, there would have been a revolt, especially as the Ottoman state strung itself too thin, because they owned states in North Africa, Arabia, Europe. It was just they were spread so far across the whole of around. What's the continent called again? Not continent. The Anatolia. That's it. They were so far spread from their home region of Anatolia that they couldn't. There would be the likelihood of revolt against their leadership would have meant that spending resources to take over these states wasn't worth it. So I think even if the Ottomans managed to take over Vienna, they wouldn't have taken over Austria as a state, as they couldn't really keep control of it, especially with the population that Austria and the Ottomans have been fighting for so long, and the population would have obviously not liked being taken over by the Ottomans, and they would have revolted at some point. So
they were so indoctrinated by Christianity that it wouldn't have just worked. No way. But let's do assume that might have worked. They might have, but then again, it's so indoctrinated by Christianity that you couldn't really convert people.
I mean,
extremists. at least.
There were states in the Balkans which, like the Romania states, so Wallachia and Moldova, that were taken over. But the thing is, we didn't really get integrated into the Turkish customs that much because we were vassals. So maybe I can see a world where Vienna becomes a vassal of the Ottoman Empire, but that's still, it's because Austria is so strong. I still don't see that lasting. So
Yeah.
I think although it would have been a great like win for them, and in terms of prestige and in terms of legacy, it would have been something that would have definitely like the whole world would have ended up hearing about it. It wouldn't. They were strong so thin across so many places that they wouldn't be able to hold and push through as
And
much.
I
Go
think the
on.
Balkan state would have seen an open window to actually try and push back the Ottoman Empire because it was spread so thin.
And I think like if Austria would have become a vassal, they would have formed a coalition with the other vassals and managed to gain independence shortly after being taken over. I don't see, like I said, I don't see it lasting.
Most probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned before, we do want to hear what you people have to say. So
Yeah.
please do intervene into the discussion. Give us some ideas.
Any comments on it?
No.
If we were wrong, please tell us so. We obviously don't know everything about history. We are just two people, and history is thousands of years of different regions across the world.
And also, like I said, we wanted to influence and show the truth within history. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're looking for, actual facts. And alternate history is always fun. We do this sometimes, always looking at how could have history been changed if something went different, a different city was taken by whoever, and like we mentioned in this podcast. So do please comment if you have anything on the Battle of Vienna or even the fall of Constantinople. Like we said, we're still open-minded about all those things, and they, like Calin said, they kind of interlink and come together because we're still discussing about the Ottoman Empire. And I think this is, even though the Byzantine Empire also played a big role within the medieval era, it's the Ottoman Empire who's going to be seen as the main protagonist in medieval.
I wouldn't say protagonist. I say antagonist.
Antagonist, yes.
Because they were seen as the bad force fighting against the good force of Christianity. Although that is a very Western way of looking at it. If we were born in Turkey, we would have definitely seen it the other way around, or we would have been taught it the other way around.
It's just like every other part of history. If you look at the Cold War, you have capitalism versus the bad communists.
Or if you were born in Russia, you would have seen the actually it depends on the people, because there is a lot of Russian people that see communism as bad, but then they also see capitalism as bad.
Communism.
I know we would have ended up there at some point. It's a tradition. It's a tradition.
But we went one more stream without Calin here mentioning Hitler for some reason. He just loves popping him in every stream. It doesn't matter if he's born, if he exists yet. I don't know.
I mean, we
first time I think it was he for some reason said Hitler instead of Stalin.
No. That I confused. I confused the Romanian Schindler guy with. Well, I confused. I said it wrong. That was a bit of a sketchy mistake. But that's how we learn. With that said, if no one has any other comments, I think we might close it here. We have been speaking for an hour and 6 minutes, and my voice is getting a bit hoarse. So
that's not just that, we kind of exhausted all of our ideas.
True.
That's why we want some input from you guys.
In terms of topics, I don't know if we have anything for next time.
Yeah, please do tell us comments now. Or leave us an email at historyofyesterday@gmail.com. Any topics you'd like to see in the future? Like I said, even alternate history, because it's always fun. And it brings a lot of discussions and arguments and possibilities.
I mean, the idea of doing Tutankhamun might be good, but that might require a bit of research from our part. We'll think about it, because we had the person on
It
Facebook
might take
mention
some
it.
time. I don't think it's going to be next podcast because we're going to need some time to do a lot more
True.
research. 'Cause right
Um,
now,
I mean, we could always just bring it back to 20th century, start talking about communism, Cold War. That's a speciality after all. Talk about some of
I want
the
to hear more about communism. Like I said, we're trying to
trying
get
to
some more
diversify.
talk about Mussolini and fascism.
Oh
in general.
yeah, what could we do that for next week?
Well, that's why I said even last podcast that we're going to try and get one of our writers who is specialized in this topic to discuss with him. We know a lot about it as well, but he's
Yeah,
specialized.
well, we want to have as much information for you as we can. So bringing an expert on a topic is always good. Or if we don't know something about a topic, bringing someone who at least has a bit of elementary knowledge about it is always good.
Like I said, I'm still waiting to hear a response from this person, and yeah, we'll see.
Communism,
If they're not available yet, well, we might do it by ourselves, I guess. We do have another
comment. That's what I was gonna say.
Communism changed the century, and there are tons of topics on the issue because of that.
True. So we could
this podcast about that.
we could literally have we could have just named it from the History of Yesterday podcast. We could name it to the just Communist podcast, and it would be in the same thing at this point because we've been banging on about these topics. So we want to diversify a little bit. I know it's our area of expertise, so it's quite easy for us to talk about it, but it's not as entertaining for us to talk about the same region of time, and I'm gonna guess it's not as entertaining for everyone else because it's hearing quite similar ideas over and over again. So in terms of
based on different contexts,
it's well, we like to look at other things. So obviously we looked at some more ancient / medieval history today, and we would like to continue along these lines as we go on because go on.
I think doing some ancient history would be nice, but then again, the problem with ancient history, we're not experts in it, and there isn't. You see, the all the empirical evidence that is out there, it's very thin. So we have to make a lot of assumptions, and I kind of don't like that because we might be wrong there. But obviously, assumptions, you're just guessing. It's not really a guess; it's an assumption. But yeah, along those lines.
All right. I think I'll move on to the outro now because we've been going off on a tangent for a while, and we've been live for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Time flies.
So we'll just wait a few more minutes, I guess.
Yeah. And any last comments before we go? As always, if you like the podcast, let us know. If you didn't like it, let us know. If we were wrong, let us know.
So we need criticism to work on that.
It's still like we haven't done that many. We have done at least 10 by now, probably. So it's still in the beginnings, humble beginnings. But if you do have a comment, let us know. Otherwise,
how we can improve.
True.
Comment on how we can improve.
You can find all of our contact details below on most of our platforms. Facebook, you can find us just History of Yesterday on Facebook. YouTube, History of Yesterday. Twitch, History of Yesterday. Email, historyofyesterday@gmail.com. Website coming soon. And then, all of the updates for the podcast are being put up on Facebook if you do want to keep up. So that is probably the best way to keep in contact with us.
And do remember, if you want to see our work or more historical articles, do visit our publication. And we have a very diversified content.
It's probably more diverse than the topics that we talk about.
And it's not that much about communism.
Yeah. With that said, I think we're going to end it there. So thank you for joining us. As always, we enjoyed your input. And next time, we will probably announce the topic on Facebook because we are still unsure. So to keep updated, as I said, follow us on Facebook. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed your time with us, and we hope you have a good day.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.